Verses 28 to 31. We have here an account of Christ's arraignment before Pilate, the Roman governor, in the praetorium, a Latin word made Greek, the praetor's house, or hall of judgment. Thither they hurried him, to get him condemned in the Roman court, and executed by the Roman power. Being resolved on his death, they took this course: that he might be put to death the more legally and regularly, according to the present constitution of their government, since they became a province of the empire, not stoned in a popular tumult, as Stephen, but put to death with the present formalities of justice. Thus he was treated as a malefactor, being made sin for us, that he might be put to death the more safely. If they could engage the Roman government in the matter, which the people stood in awe of, there would be little danger of an uproar. That he might be put to death with more reproach to himself. The death of the cross, which the Romans commonly used, being of all deaths the most ignominious, they were desirous by it to put an indelible mark of infamy upon him, and so to sink his reputation forever. This therefore they harped upon: crucify him, that he might be put to death with less reproach to them. It was an invidious thing to put one to death that had done so much good in the world, and therefore they were willing to throw the odium upon the Roman government, to make that the less acceptable to the people, and save themselves from the reproach. Thus many are more afraid of the scandal of a bad action than of the sin of it. See Acts 5:28. Two things are here observed concerning the prosecution. Their policy and industry in the prosecution. It was early, some think about 2 or 3 in the morning, others about 5 or 6, when most people were in their beds, and so there would be the less danger of opposition from the people that were for Christ, while, at the same time, they had their agents about, to call those together whom they could influence to cry out against him. See how much their heart was upon it, and how violent they were in the prosecution. Now that they had him in their hands, they would lose no time till they had him upon the cross, but denied themselves their natural rest, to push on this matter. See Micah 2:1. Their superstition and vile hypocrisy, the chief priests and elders, though they came along with the prisoner, that the thing might be done effectually, went not into the judgment hall, because it was the house of an uncircumcised Gentile, lest they should be defiled, but kept out of doors, that they might eat the Passover, not the paschal lamb, that was eaten the night before, but the Passover feast, upon the sacrifices which were offered on the 15th day, the Chaggagah, as they called it. The Passover bullocks spoken of do. 16:2, 2 Chr 30:24, 35:8, 9. These they were to eat of, and therefore would not go into the court, for fear of touching a Gentile, and thereby contracting, not a legal, but only a traditional pollution. This they scrupled, but made no scruple of breaking through all the laws of equity to persecute Christ to the death. They strained at a gnat, and swallowed a camel. Let us now see what passed at the judgment hall. Here is Pilate's conference with the prosecutors. They were called first, and stated what they had to say against the prisoner, as was very fit, v. 29:32. The judge calls for the indictment. Because they would not come into the hall, he went out to them into the court before the house, to talk with them. Looking upon Pilate as a magistrate, that we may give every one his due, here are 3 things commendable in him. His diligent and close application to business. If it had been upon a good occasion, it had been very well that he was willing to be called up early to the judgment seat. Men in public trusts must not love their ease. His condescending to the humor of the people, and receding from the honor of his place to gratify their scruples. He might have said, if they be so nice as not to come into me, let them go home as they came, by the same rule as we might say, if the complainant scruple to take off his hat to the magistrate, let not his complaint be heard, but Pilate insists not upon it, bears with them, and goes out to them, for, when it is for good, we should become all things to all men. His adherence to the rule of justice, in demanding the accusation, suspecting the prosecution to be malicious, what accusation bring you against this man? What is the crime you charge him with, and what proof have you of it? It was a law of nature, before Valerius Publicola made it a Roman law, ne quis indita causa condemnatur no man should be condemned unheard. See Acts 25:16, 17. It is unreasonable to commit a man, without alleging some cause in the warrant, and much more to arraign a man when there is no bill of indictment found against him. The prosecutors demand judgment against him upon a general surmise that he was a criminal, not alleging, much less proving, anything in particular worthy of death or of bonds. v. 30 If he were not a malefactor, or evildoer, we would not have delivered him to thee to be condemned. This bespeaks them. Very rude and uncivil to Pilate, a company of ill-natured men, that affected to despise dominion. When Pilate was so complaisant to them as to come out to treat with them, yet they were to the highest degree out of humor with him. He put the most reasonable question to them that could be, but, if it had been the most absurd, they could not have answered him with more disdain. Very spiteful and malicious towards our Lord Jesus, right or wrong, they will have him to be a malefactor, and treated as one. We are to presume a man innocent till he is proved guilty, but they will presume him guilty who could prove himself innocent. They cannot say, he is a traitor, a murderer, a felon, a breaker of the peace, but they say, he is an evildoer. He an evildoer who went about doing good. Let those be called whom he had cured and fed and taught, whom he has rescued from devils, and raised from death, and let them be asked whether he be an evildoer or no. Note, it is no new thing for the best of benefactors to be branded and run down as the worst of malefactors. Very proud and conceited of themselves, and their own judgment and justice, as if their delivering a man up, under the general character of a malefactor, were sufficient for the civil magistrate to ground a judicial sentence upon, than which what could be more haughty? The judge remands him to their own court, v. 31 Take you him, and judge him according to your own law, and do not trouble me with him. Now, some think Pilate herein complimented them, acknowledging the remains of their power, and allowing them to exert it. Corporal punishment they might inflict, as scourging in their synagogues, whether capital or no is uncertain. But, saith Pilate, go as far as your law will allow you, and, if you go further, it shall be connived at. This he said, willing to do the Jews a pleasure, but unwilling to do them the service they required. Others think he bantered them, and upbraided them with their present state of weakness and subjection. They would be the sole judges of the guilt. Pray, saith Pilate, if you will be so, go on as you have begun. You have found him guilty by your own law, condemn him, if you dare, by your own law, to carry on the humor. Nothing is more absurd, nor more deserves to be exposed, than for those to pretend to dictate, and boast of their wisdom, who are weak and in subordinate stations, and whose lot it is to be dictated to. Some think Pilate here reflects upon the law of Moses, as if it allowed them what the Roman law would by no means allow, the judging of a man unheard. It may be your law will suffer such a thing, but ours will not. Thus, through their corruptions, the law of God was blasphemed, and so is his gospel too. They disown any authority as judges, and, since it must be so, are content to be prosecutors. They now grow less insolent and more submissive, and own, it is not lawful for us to put any man to death, whatever less punishment we may inflict, and this is a malefactor whom we would have the blood of. Some think they had lost their power to give judgment in matters of life and death only by their own carelessness, and cowardly yielding to the darling iniquities of the age. So Dr. Lightfoot Alcexesti, it is not in our power to pass sentence of death upon any. If we do, we shall have the mob about us immediately. Others think their power was taken from them by the Romans, because they had not used it well, or because it was thought too great a trust to be lodged in the hands of a conquered and yet an unsubdued people. Their acknowledgment of this they designed for a compliment to Pilate, and to atone for their rudeness, v. 30, but it amounts to a full evidence that the scepter was departed from Judah, and therefore that now the Messiah was come. General 49:10. If the Jews have no power to put any man to death, where is the scepter? Yet they ask not, where is the Shiloh?